This is Frank Marino of Mahogany Rush, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Antita, and with me in Dogbowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We would like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music. For our intro and bumper ending, tonight's guest is Frank Marino of Mahogany Rush.
Yes, he's on promoting his new box set live at the Agora Theatre. 6 hours of live performances, Blu-ray, DVD, over 58 tracks.
Man, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Frank, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Hunted.
Frank, thanks for joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be with you guys.
Hey, we're excited to have you, and thank you for all the correspondence. So let's get right into this. The past November of 2024, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush released a 6-hour live performance at the Agora. Can you give our listeners an insight to the details of the packaging and the box set and I guess everything that went involved with this thing?
Well, I mean, it took a long time to fix because it was damaged. It took me forever to fix it up. But it was a long day. It was actually 12 hours that we played.
Wow.
With a couple of short breaks, but I ended up only putting 6 hours on the Blu-ray and on the DVD, and it's been great so far.
Fantastic. Well, when it comes to I guess playing 12 hours and I guess skimming it down to 6. Talk about the trials and tribulations of doing all that massive editing for something like that.
Well, the editing, that's something I actually don't mind doing as much as editing. I like editing. I like editing more than I like mixing. I like editing more than I like recording. I mean, I like it because it's the kind of thing where the edit sort of tells you what you have to do, and you have to do it, in order to do it properly. And you can tell right away if you've done it properly or not. If you hear the edit, you haven't done a good job. Being a good editor is rather like being a good spy. If you do a really great job, no one knows you did it. So it would be, for the amount of editing that I had to do on that particular piece of work, I should get a worldwide award for it, but I never will, because you can't tell. You just can't tell. Everything is just so perfectly done that you can't tell. So, I'm glad for that. But that's when you take your time at doing anything, you're going to do a good job, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, take us back to that show. Can you talk a little bit about the other band members you had playing with you?
Well, my drummer is Dave Good. He's a Californian. He's been with me. He went off for a little while being with me, but he's been mostly with me since the early 90s, like the late 80s, early 90s. And he's just a powerhouse monster and one of the best I've ever played with. The bass player that we had there was a guy local from here. He sort of got out of music after that. He stayed in it for a while doing some jazz gigs and stuff like that, but he's basically no longer playing. That's what I hear. And the guitar player is Mick Lane. He's still playing and he still comes to visit. We still jam and we're still doing the same old thing, but we're not likely to go on the road. That's highly, highly unlikely at this point.
Very good. Well, this box set, is extremely in depth from what you've trimmed it down to. This includes 58 tracks, specific set list. Talk about the planning process, I guess, of selecting the tracks that you wanted to edit to put into this thing, opposed to the ones that you left out.
Well, I wanted to use a lot of the stuff that we played that was from my earlier material, from my earlier albums, and I wanted to do stuff that, there's some stuff on this DVD or on this Blu-ray that does appear on some live record, but a lot of it, a great majority of it, never appeared before on any live record. And so I wanted to try to stick to that kind of thing. I wanted to have it like a whole live record of new stuff. Well, it's not new stuff, it's old stuff, but done a new way. And that was my concern with it. What I looked for is we're a kind of a different kind of group in the sense that we never do anything the same way twice. So we're like, you're probably what you might call your original jam band, because I come from the late 60s. And when I started in the late 60s and early 70s, that's what you did. You didn't plan what you were doing. That came later. Bands started doing that later, but bands around my time would just get together and play. They just make stuff up. Yeah. And that's sort of I've never stopped doing that. Even during all of the 70s and all of the 80s and all of the 90s, and even when I was doing all of the big shows, I always had that kind of spontaneous thing where the guys that I played with, the only rule that we really had in the band was that you had to play. Like you had to be there to create on the fly. There was not a rehearsal. It wasn't a rehearsal kind of thing. I don't think we ever did a rehearsal. I mean, we could call our sound checks rehearsals, but they weren't really rehearsals. And if anybody knows anything about my albums, one thing they won't know, so I'll give you a scoop here, is every song on every album was written or composed and put together on the night we recorded it.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
There was no pre-production. Other bands were doing stuff like pre-production and stuff. We didn't do that. We would get to the studio and I'd look at the guys and I'd say, well, let's just do something different and hope it's not like the last record. And then, they'd give me some time to just sort of invent something, and I'd invent it, and then I'd talk to the drummer, and I'd talk to the bass player, and I'd say, what do you think of this? And we'd all play, and that's how the songs got created. And I think in my whole career, there's only one or two songs that we had been playing out that hadn't been put on the record, that ended up on a record. And it was very few and far between. Most of the time it was very, very, very off the cuff. And then once you've done it, then you would sit down with it and say, okay, let's sweeten it up, or let's add an overdub here, or this sounds like it wants to have bongos in it, or it wants to have a tambourine. God forbid, don't say more cowbell. And that's how it worked. And that's how the live gigs worked. So we would do the live gigs, and we would just show up and just play. And I'd start, there was no set list. We just, I think the only time I ever had a set list was when we were doing the DVD.
Oh, wow.
And the only reason I had a set list was because we knew we were going to play for 12 hours, so it wasn't really a set list. It was a piece of paper that had all the names of all my songs on it, or as many as could fit on the paper, so that I could look down and remember one or two, because they were coming from the past, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But for the most part, we never had set lists, and that used to drive lighting guys crazy and sound guys crazy, because they wanted to know, especially the lighting guys, they wanted to know what you were going to be doing, or, when to turn the lights on and off,
Yeah.
But we weren't that kind of band. We were very improvisational.
So cool. That's really cool. I think that's one of the reasons I've always enjoyed live albums from bands over the years. Sometimes songs can sound, harder or more edgier when live than they do from the studio production.
I think there's no doubt that that the best performances of any band are usually when they do it live. I think if a band has great records and then plays live and isn't interesting, I think that band doesn't last. I think that the public sort of, wants to know that band can deliver live, that it really is what they think it is. And unfortunately, there have been some bands that did deliver live, but then got talked into doing certain kinds of records because they had to get on the radio, or they needed a hit or something like that. And then they went out and started doing those songs and ended up losing a lot of their original fans because of it. That does happen.
Talk a little bit more about those studio created bands that when they went out to play live, they couldn't play at all. We've seen it before in the years past. I mean, we've seen it a lot. Talk a little bit more about, coming across bands that are just studio creations.
Well, unfortunately, that's actually what's happening more now. It happened back then too, but it wasn't something that anyone really wanted to be part of. And what happened was, Frank Zappa once said that the record business was better when the guys running it smoked a cigar and didn't know anything about music. And they'd say, I don't know anything about that. Just, the kids like it, so sign it, He said that was a better time for music, because what happened was, once A&R guys got involved, professional A&R guys, and I say that in quotes, they started trying to sort of manufacture the bands. And they would manufacture those bands based on other bands they had heard on some other label. It was almost like Coke trying to be better than Pepsi, or Pepsi trying to be better than Coke. It became very corporate. And there was a whole rash of bands for a while that were called put-together bands, where they would take, the stars from 4 or 5 different bands and put them together in one band and say, that's going to be the next big thing. It never really took off, did it?
No, it didn't. It did not.
No, because people know the difference. I was asked personally to be part of those things on a couple of occasions and refused to do it.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't want to be put in a box of any kind. The last thing I wanted to do was have to go and practice songs. I just never did that. I just never did that. I played a lot, but I didn't practice.
Well, I want to know more about, you talked about putting the box set together and what a chore that was to go through and do the editing. We've talked to various artists where, they found the tapes in a box in their basement, and then they had to like put them in an oven and bake them and stuff like that to get them to,
Yes.
to survive. Was there anything like that going on with these?
It was that times 1 million. It was really, it consumed my entire life. It made me ill. The amount of work that I had to do to repair these audio tracks was like, imagine having to clean every beat one by one to get rid of the noise and to make it sound like a proper beat.
Yeah.
Mm.
Imagine having to mow your lawn with a needle and taking out every piece of grass one by one and planting another one that's shorter.
Mm.
It was really, really painstaking. It was 24/7. It took all my time, and it resulted in 1.5 million edits.
Yeah.
Wow. My goodness.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's Begun to Rain is one of my favorite tracks in performances on that DVD. Talk a little bit more about that song and the history behind it.
Well, the history of the song lyrically is really about a personal issue with, romance.
Yeah.
and also finding, it was like a dual-edged thing. It had a little bit to do with a romantic affair and a little bit to do with God.
Mm.
Finding oneself that way, spiritually. But then the song morphs into a jazz piece.
Yes.
And that's what I liked about it. It wasn't intended to do that. Like, there we were, I said to the guys that night, here's a song, and it goes like this, and, soft cries and gentle sighs and blah, 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 and let's just do the song, and here's the chords. And then when it was done, I just started going boom, 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 boom. The bass, followed along and turned into this jazz piece. And on the record, that jazz piece fades out pretty quickly.
Mm.
Because there wasn't, when you're doing records, you only have like 18 to 20 minutes aside. So you can't do 40-minute tunes.
Mm. Yes.
But when we were live, like on the Agora, that jazz piece goes on for quite a while.
It's fantastic. I wanted to interject one other track. Dragonfly is just my all-time favorite Mahogany Rush song. I love it because it's got that funk to it. And is there a backstory behind that track? Because it is fantastic. I was mowing my grass last night, listening to that thing. It's like, man, every time I listen to that song, it gets better.
That track was literally written in 5 minutes. It was basically, okay, we need a song, guys. Try this. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So they start playing along, and then I'm calling out the changes. I'm saying, go up to G, go up to G. And they go up to G, da-da-da-da-da. Go back down to E, because all the songs were instrumentals. The lyrics were always added after the fact. Mm-hmm. So when we'd go into the studio, it was more like a jam based on instrumentals and on feel. And then later, when we decided, hey, that's pretty good, we'll keep that, because believe me, guys, there was a few we didn't keep.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't all rainbows, right? But the ones that we would keep, I would say, okay, I'll write lyrics for that, and the rest would be mixed and put together, But that song you're talking about became kind of a mainstay because it was one of the first songs that got radio play.
Oh, wow.
We weren't a radio band by any means, But that song got some radio play, as did Strange Dreams much later.
Very good.
I'll tell you something about Strange Dreams that's very interesting.
Yes.
Which Strange Dreams became a #1 radio hit. That's the only time I ever had a #1 radio hit. And yet Strange Dreams, if you listen to it, not the live version, the studio version, is the only song I've ever done that has no guitar solo.
Oh, very good.
Nice.
There's absolutely no guitar solo in it.
Didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
So you're known as a Gibson SG man. Can you talk a little bit about your setup for like this show? How many guitars did you take with you? I know a lot of artists we talk to, you have to have different ones for different tunings and things like that. But how did it work for you in this live set?
Well, I use a special SG that I had made for me in the 70s that has single coil Stratocaster pickups in it. So what you have is an SG that sounds like a Stratocaster. And I use that guitar. Now, that's not my main guitar, believe it or not. But it happened to be the guitar I used on that show. My main guitar is an SG61 SG with humbucking pickups. But it just so happened on that particular show, I was into, for the last few weeks, I had been into using the other guitar. So there you have it. It wasn't planned. But I generally use 2 guitars during a show. And I only change guitars if something breaks. And the only reason I change to the second guitar is because it's in another tuning. When we do Strange Universe, that's in a specific tuning. So I have another SG that's tuned to that song. But normally I don't change guitars for the whole show. And had I started the Agora show with the other SG, that would have been the one that ended up on the record.
Very good.
I didn't plan to use the one with the single coils. It was the day I used it. And some days I use it and some days I use the other one. Like these days I'm playing a lot again, and I'm using the original 61 with what I think are much better pickups. There's a pickup maker named Lindy Fralin, makes Fralin pickups. I think they're the best pickups ever made for guitars. So I'm giving him a plug, and I don't even know him personally.
Well, and you also have your own custom guitar pedals too, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I always built my own gear. I started with pedals and I moved on to amplifiers and everything else. There's not a single piece of gear that I own that isn't modified in some way, shape, or form. Everything I own, every pedal I have, if I didn't build it, design it and build it, let's say I bought it. For instance, if I bought a Big Muff or something, the first thing I do is take it apart, scope it out, and then find out how to make it better. So everything is built. And so I decided, since I'm off the road now, I decided, why don't I take all of those designs that I've used personally on that DVD too, that gets me the sound I get, why don't I constitute that into pedals that look nice and hand build them and let new people use them? So I started this kind of pedal company. And we have a page at frankmarinoaudio.com that has some of the pedals, and there's more pedals coming. But I think, guys, you have to understand that when I started, there wasn't a lot of pedals.
Right.
There was maybe 2 or 3, and there wasn't a lot of amps. So I ended up having to sort of build everything. I ended up having to learn to, if I wanted a sound, I had to build it. And I ended up building a pedal board with 22 foot pedals on it that were all, copies of the next one and copies of the other one. And I'd place one before a fuzz and one after a fuzz. And I'd have, Echoplex and all this kind of stuff on a 6, it was almost 6 feet long. And we'd show up at these gigs and everyone would look at me because in those days people didn't use a lot of pedals. I did. And I looked like a real weirdo doing it too. But today everybody's using them. Yes. And I'm using much, much less.
Well, very good. Kind of switch gears on you here. Mahogany Rush's last proper studio album came in 2000, Eye of the Storm.
Can you kind of
Right.
compare and contrast the evolution and maturity of your songwriting to those of the early albums like Child of the Novelty, something like that? Can you kind of compare and contrast your evolution as a songwriter throughout the years up to that point?
You know, I'm in a sense, I'm glad you brought up that particular album, because that album was done for a purpose. And the purpose was this. I had been thinking, I started that album in 1993. It only came out in 2000 when it finally came out. But I started it in 93, and I did it slowly. And I had a plan for that album. It was, I wanted to know what kind of record I could have made as my first record if I had the knowledge and experience that I had by the 90s. So I went into the studio and I made sure that I didn't use any piece of gear, not microphones. I even used a curly cord for my guitar. Everything that was available to me in 1970, 71 is the only gear I used. I didn't use any new plugins or reverbs or digital things or anything new. It was an album that I could have made as my first album, but for the fact that I didn't have that kind of experience for the first album. So Eye of the Storm was a return to what would have been my original route.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That is very cool.
And I even used the old guitar. I used one microphone, one speaker, like all the stuff that was only available in 1970, 71, which is when I did Maxim. And if you look at the difference between Eye of the Storm and Maxim, it's worlds apart. I mean, it's absolutely worlds apart. If I could have made Eye of the Storm in 1971 as Eye of the Storm, compared to all the other records that were around in 71, it would have been up there with Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, well said.
I mean, it's worlds apart from Maxim, but it was an experiment.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about 1981, billed as your first solo album, The Power of Rock and Roll. I listened to that one today, loved it from start to finish. I thought that was a great album. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the making of that one?
Well, they were all done the same way, and it never really mattered whether the record company called us Mahogany Rush or called us Frank Marino or called us Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. We always had a problem with them. You know, like the band, when I called the band Mahogany Rush, I wasn't naming a band, I was naming an experience.
Yeah.
It was almost like saying the project, right?
Yeah.
That's what it was. And it didn't matter who was playing in the project because the music was about Mahogany Rush. It was Mahogany Rush music. Like the way I looked at it was there's blues music and jazz music and pop music and Mahogany Rush music. It was a type of music. But the record company, especially when we got over to CBS, they weren't happy with the fact that it was Mahogany Rush. They wanted me to drop the words Mahogany Rush and just use my name because it was the age when they were promoting all the artists by their own names, like Ted Nugent and stuff like that.
Yep.
So they wanted to do the same thing, but I didn't want to do that. So as a compromise, I said, well, call it both Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush.
Yeah.
So that became the name. So that fight continued every time we did a record. And finally, on Power of Rock and Roll, the one you're talking about, they just called it Frank Marino. So then Juggernaut came out as Frank Marino. And then I left the record label.
Yeah. Yeah, because that can be confusing to the fans, too.
Because, I mean, I had enough with those people.
Yeah.
You know, when I left, after Juggernaut, I left Columbia, and I swore I'd never go back to a major again, and I never did. I said, I'm going to stay off of the major labels. I don't care if I don't play stadiums anymore. I don't care. It didn't bother me. And I'm just going to make records when I feel like it and tour when I feel like it and just be really loose, like I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I think it's got to be. Like, I never chased the stardom that goes with that so many guys get. I didn't really care for it. As a matter of fact, it kind of embarrasses me. I feel kind of funny about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get into limos and get out of limos and do all that kind of stuff because I felt kind of like a jerk, It just wasn't me. So I left the big label and I said, I'm gonna do music for the sake of having fun. Because that's how I started, for the sake of having fun. And I think everybody should do it that way. I mean, not everybody does, but I think when you do it that way, people notice.
Well, I guess this brings up a question that when you're dealing with a big label like CBS and they were putting maybe the pressure on you to be Frank Marino and eliminate Mahogany Rush, was there ever a moment where you felt like the label was trying to say, hey, we want you to kind of go a different direction under your own name and maybe be a little bit more pop or a little bit more commercial?
Oh, always. Always. Are you kidding? That was the whole problem.
Yeah.
Why are you I would finish an album. I did 7 albums for them. I would finish an album on a Monday, and on Wednesday they'd tell me, okay, so when's the next one coming? Like before it even came out. They just didn't believe. They didn't believe. My live album of 77, they didn't want that to come out at all. They fought like cats and dogs to say, we're not putting out a live album. It's ridiculous. And I had to fight like hell to have that album put out. And you want to know the funny part of it? That album still sells from 77. Columbia doesn't keep stuff on their catalog unless it sells.
Yeah.
And that's the one, that one is still on their catalog. Now, I don't know how many it sells because they're never going to tell me.
Exactly.
I'm one of the many artists that didn't, get to drink at the fountain,
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I like doing about this, you don't necessarily get with today's artists because a lot of the tracks are emailed back and forth, which is still amazing that they can do that. But, when you go back to the 70s and you're in the proper studio and you're recording an album, do you have a story of like, so-and-so from another band's in the album next door and you guys get together and hang out and chat or something? Do you have a story like that?
Well, I was always friendly with whomever was around. The question was always whether they were friendly with me. Now,
yeah.
You know that some of my music owes a lot to Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because of that became a kind of a criticism in the press. And sometimes other musicians from other bands would take that criticism, and whether it was out of jealousy or whatever, they would play that up. So I didn't get a lot of friendship from a lot of them, but I did get a lot of friendship from a lot of others. So if I would speak about the ones that were friendly, the guys like from Maple Wine or like Uli Roth or the guys that I had a good time with, not a good time because I'm not a partier, but I mean like that I was, collegial with.
Sure.
There's a lot of guys like that, but they're usually the quiet ones. It's not the rowdy ones, Yeah. Although Steve Marriott from Humble Pie was a very good friend and he was pretty rowdy, But for the most part, I spent a lot of time alone, for the most part. And there were some guys whose names I won't mention because I don't speak ill of them.
Right.
Who really you would think would have been very nice and very friendly, who when I met them were anything but nice and friendly.
Mm.
So that was a great disappointment for me. And one of the highlights of my life was when because I've got heroes too.
Yeah.
but my heroes are guys from the 60s. And when I saw a video of one of my heroes mentioning my name, that was a highlight of my life, and that was Johnny Winter.
Oh,
so
cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
You know, like when that happens, you can't imagine how you feel.
Oh, yeah.
Got one last question for you, then we're going to leave you alone for the evening.
Okay.
You've been a part of a lot of studio stuff in your career. And besides, being guest on other musicians and other little things here and there, out of all of your studio albums, is there one album that you wish that you could re-record and redo?
Yeah, there is. It's the one I did re-record and redo. It's called Maxum.
Yes.
Okay.
And the new redo is called Eye of the Storm. that was really the intent, right?
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
But yes, I look, I'd like to redo it even with all those songs and redo them again. But when I play those songs live, that is kind of a redo of that album. Like on the DVD on the Agora show, we do New Rock and Roll and we do Buddy. And Buddy is done like very, very different than the original. But I think it's way better than the original.
Well, very good. Well, Frank, we're out of our allotted time this evening. Is there anything we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No. I just, I mentioned my pedals. So if people are interested in the pedals, and the DVD, if they're interested in the DVD, I guess the URLs for those.
Sure,
I guess you're going to tell people where they can get those things.
Yeah, they'll be in the notes of the episode.
But I will say this, with the pedals, like I don't know what's going to happen now because we may not be able to sell to the U.S.
Right.
because of this tariff thing.
Yeah.
So we have no idea like what's going to happen. Like it's supposed to be all like by next week we're supposed to find out, but it's possible that we won't be able to. Well, we would be able to, but the tariff will make them so expensive no one's going to want to buy them,
I kind of had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah.
We're really sort of, upset about it in a way because it had been going pretty good, But if that takes effect, what can I say? Like, I can't, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not the guy that's making that decision. So, I just hope that it all works out. I hope that cooler heads prevail and it all works out. But so far, I don't know.
Well,
what do you think?
We have our fingers crossed for you because we have no idea either. So, this is how things are going to work out. Once Jeff, the editing wizard over here, gets all the boogers cleaned up, it'll sound like $1 million, and we will send the link to you. And if you could please share it wherever you could, we'd really appreciate it.
Sure, I'll share it for sure.
Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was an honor to have you on tonight.
Enjoy talking to you.
It's always an honor to be on. And where are you guys, by the way?
Yeah, we are. It's Quad Cities. We're right in the middle of we're Rock Island. We're on the Mississippi River, right between Iowa and Illinois, almost smack dab in the middle of the country.
Yeah, you've heard of Davenport. You've heard of Davenport, Iowa, of course, right?
I've played Davenport, Iowa.
Yeah.
So we're right across the river from Davenport.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Well, if I ever get back on the road, man, we'll get together and have a chat.
Absolutely.
Great.
What the future holds, nobody knows.
Hey, let's hope so. Let's hope everything goes okay with these tariffs, and I'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
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 Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says they're